my fine friends. Welcome back to Destination Discourse. I'm your host, Stuart Butler from Visit Myrtle Beach, joined today with Adam Stoker from the Brand Revolt. I'm getting really good at that, Adam.
You are. We're gonna train you with our brand standards and have you remove the from the front of Brand Revolt and
Oh,
just leave
I'm
it at Brand
sorry. Is
Revolt. But
that well, your URL is thebrandrevolt.com, right?
the
So I guess
URL
that's so
is the Brand
confusing.
Revolt. Yeah.
Now, I've got to tell you, you've been wearing the hat for a while, right? This is Brand Revolt's logo on your hat with the
Yeah.
backwards B because you're cute like that. Um, it's been bothering me because I've been trying to figure out what your logo reminds me of, and I couldn't figure it out. And then I happened to be seeing something the other day, and I figured out what it is. It looks kind of like the Autobot or the Decepticon logo from Transformers. Like it's that's what it reminds
Okay.
me of from a
Yeah.
distance. Like it's like you look like I'm not sure if you're an Autobot or a Decepticon. I guess we'll find out today. But
I
yeah,
think
that's
I
what it's
think
been
some
reminding me
would
of.
argue that I'm more of a Decepticon, but
Yeah.
I think I'm more of an Autobot.
Well, there we go. Transformers knowledge thrown down to the audience today. I mean, they tune in for all kinds of knowledge, right? Destination marketing, Star Wars, Transformers. Today, you're going to get a lot of knowledge because we've got a super bright guest with us today. I'm really excited. I've had some really interesting, deep data conversations, and I enjoy nerding out. But today, welcome Jay Kinghorn from Zartico. How are you, Jay?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here. This is going to be a fun conversation.
Oh, we're super jazzed. You and I have gotten into it a couple of times, and I know I talked to you. I think the last time I talked to you was right after we recorded an episode with Zeke Coleman on this show about the difference between correlation and causation, and he had sort of thrown out the blue pill, red pill analogy. So I'm hoping we can revisit that a little bit today. But we're going to be talking about Geo-Data. We're going to be talking about the things that DMOs are doing wrong with data, things they can do right, and we're going to hopefully paint a picture of a brighter future for tomorrow. That's the goal, at least. We may cry, we may laugh, we may fight a little bit. I don't know. That's the beauty of the show. We never know. It's totally unscripted, totally unplanned, unprepared. Some would say unprofessional, but we have a good time, and hopefully some people are learning along the way. But before we jump into the topic, it's that moment. And Adam, don't let us down, man. Did you shorten the jingle? It's time for Stu's News.
I did not shorten the jingle.
You're just gonna jump to the good bit?
Yeah, there we go. I'll give us just the end of it. There we go. Oh, didn't mean to start it again.
It, really?
That was an accident. That was an accident.
Like I literally see like the counter of listeners drop down precipitously every time that jingle comes on. Today's
Here we go. I'll
news
move us quickly.
Yeah, let's move. So you're sharing your screen if you're watching on YouTube. You're gonna hear the audio if you're listening along. But this is a campaign that I thought was kind of interesting. We talk a lot about storytelling. We talk a lot about how DMO's commercials are often the same generic story retold in the same way. It's like people writing stuff, and ad destination is authentic and real, and people are eating and all that fun stuff. But I stumbled across this campaign from Visit Island. Is it Visit Island or Discover Island? I forget, but the country of Ireland has done this really cool series of campaign where they're really, I think, doing a better job storytelling than most. It's sort of, there's a series of these. It's about what fills your heart is the name of the campaign, and they have a series of videos. They're using celebrity, so not everyone in the US is going to recognize some of these folks, but I think most people that have watched some of the cool shows coming out of Ireland are going to recognize these, but they really do it in an authentic first person's perspective. And we talked on the show before about how the destination makes the mistake of trying to be the hero of the story. This is a really good job of putting the actual protagonists as the heroes of the story so the audience can see themselves in the story. So this is about a 2-minute video, so you can follow along at home, and it's funny, it's charming, it showcases the things in a new and interesting novel way. So Adam, you want to hit play for us?
Thank you. It's so great to be back in Northern Ireland. Right, so what is the plan?
So I was thinking that we should just start off with all the faves. Take in the gorgeous views.
Look, there's a dolphin!
A nice stroll on the beach.
Come on, Slowco! I'm coming!
Go for a walk on the Peace Bridge.
Oh, I love the Peace Bridge.
Finish it off with a nice bag of chips up the old city walls.
That sounds class. I need lunch, but because if I don't have lunch, I go a bit nuts.
Aye, fair enough, and you're nuts enough without missing your lunch.
Also, we need to add in a bit of art and culture. You know how much I love art.
Oh, definitely. We can't be missing the art and culture. So, gorgeous views, stroll on the beach.
I'm coming! Ah!
Lobster lunch. Isn't this lovely? Burn it off on the Giant's Causeway. Got it? Check in a bit of art. Stunning. Inspirational.
Would you look at the brushstrokes on that?
Walk on the Peace Bridge. Finish it off with a nice bag of chips off the old city walls.
That sounds brilliant. You know, sometimes I feel sorry for people who aren't from here.
I know, it's lousy. Do you know what we're missing?
What?
A bit of history. You know I love my historical ruins.
Oh, don't be talking about your ex-boyfriends like that. Right, okay, so gorgeous views, beach, lobster lunch, Giant's Causeway, art, old stuff.
3, 2, 1.
Oh, there we go! Even older stuff.
That is class and old.
Peace Bridge, chips up the walls.
Do you know what? There's only one word for a trip like that.
Absolutely cracker.
Fill your heart with Ireland. Discover more at ireland.com.
Thank you. So I'm just going to do a cold reaction to that, guys. So Adam, you want to go first and tell us what you think? I don't know if you'd seen this campaign before, but obviously I shared it with you earlier. And let me know your thoughts.
I hadn't seen it, and I went on a little bit of a journey because at the beginning when I saw it for the first time, I kind of thought, why is Stuart sending me this? And a big part of that was because I wasn't familiar with the Dairy Girls who they put at the center of this campaign. And so I had to do a little bit of research. And then the more I got into who the Dairy Girls are and the role that they actually play in Irish culture, it became much more interesting to me. And the other thing that I thought was smart about their usage of it is this is clearly a goal to get international travel, people coming from outside of Ireland into Northern Ireland. And the way a lot of people have learned about Ireland and its culture has been through the Dairy Girls. From an international perspective, this was a big hit on Netflix. And they're using the stars of that show to then invite people to come and demonstrate what they can experience. So it got kind of more and more strategically brilliant to me as I learned more about what they were trying to do. And then the thing that I think is really smart is there was big time repetition built in. And, you know, what are the key things that you would do if you came to Northern Ireland? Well, you'd go to the Peace Bridge, you'd walk on the beach, right? You'd eat chips. And so I felt like their use of repetition kind of solidified what people ought to consider doing when they come and what are the most important things. And when you do that, I think it sticks in people's mind a little bit more. It's almost, you know, people used to say with traditional media, you need to get like a 3 frequency in order for people to you know, take action. Well, they just gave us a 3 frequency in the middle of a single ad. And so I feel like it was a really smart ad. I was completely unfamiliar with the Dairy Girls beforehand, and it was kind of fun to learn what they were doing from a strategic perspective and kind of be sold on it along the way.
Yeah, I agree. Jay, what'd you think?
I really liked it. It's a very clever ad. It was engaging. Obviously, the music is one of those things that's subtle, but it is so distinctive. And so I think what they did really well was they leaned into the iconic brand, you know, rooting it in an Irish pub and starting with 2 pints of Guinness helps you set the scene and set the table really quickly and effectively. And, you know, having come from a state tourism background myself, I know the political pressure that a large destination is under to not fall prey to that something for everyone campaign. And it was a way that they introduced lots of different facets of traveling through Ireland without falling into the montage of beautiful clips. So they did it in a very clever way, and they did get that repetition. That was something that stuck with me.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it has a lot of hearts, and I'm the same. Like, I haven't seen Dairy Girls, Adam, but I'm familiar with it. It's part of the zeitgeist that surrounds me, and so I love the fact, you know, obviously that show wasn't something Discover Island created, but they're leaning into its fame and they recognize the value of good storytelling in tourism. And so they're leaning into that. Even the part for the folks that are listening and watching this, there's one part where they talk about the brush strokes and they're actually looking at a mural of them, of the cast from Dairy Girls. So I think it's really good. Now it's interesting, and I like this as well. More and more brands are leaning into this longer form of storytelling. And I say longer form, it's longer than a 30-second commercial, right? That's just under 2 minutes. So you're never going to see that full spot on TV or traditional media. You're going to see it on digital and YouTube and stuff like that. But a lot of brands have leaned into that, where they'll have a shorter version, which they have a shorter version of this, and then there's a longer version. This has like almost 700,000 views on their YouTube channel. But for DMO commercial, that's pretty stellar, right? And so I love the fact they're breaking a lot of the tropes that, you know, you touched on, Jay, in terms of we're everything to everyone. They're also they're changing the perspective, right? They're putting the audience in the seats by telling the story through relatable characters. And so I love this campaign. I think it's smart on so many levels and has a lot of legs. So good job, Discover Island. Congratulations.
Can I make one more comment on this, Stuart?
Yeah.
So the thing that I also thought was really interesting, you know, the juxtaposition of 2 weeks ago we had the Super Bowl and this just completely arbitrary use of celebrity in an effort to sell products. And then you compare that to what Northern Ireland did here, where they found people that are culturally attached to the destination that will help connect people to the destination, as opposed to, you know, Samuel L. Jackson randomly showing up in an ad that has nothing to do with anything you've ever seen before with Samuel L. Jackson. I think that's the difference in the use of celebrity, because I do think there's a place for celebrities to be successful in an advertising campaign, but there's got to be a better strategic connection, which Ireland definitely found. And so I just wanted to note for the audience, we talked negatively about several of the Super Bowl commercials that used celebrities. There is a way to do it effectively, and I think Ireland figured that out.
Yeah. Yeah. And the celebrity can be not necessarily the individual, it could be the IP. I think if we look back several years ago, Australia did a really discovered Australia or Visit Australia. They had a really clever campaign that led up to the Super Bowl using Crocodile Dundee as a trope, right? And so obviously that's a very familiar character, and they had his son that you thought it was going to be a movie, and it ended up being a commercial to Visit Australia. So I think it can be done. I got to tell you guys, being in the US, there's some creative folks here, but we're seeing more of this breaking the mold creative thinking outside. We talked a lot about on Stu's News about different countries that are doing innovative things, and hopefully this show bringing new ideas and new content to the Americas is going to encourage more people to take risks like this. I thought really good job.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Stu's News lived up to the hype today. Thought and didn't go and all. But let's jump into our topic. Jay, you're a data nerd. You've been on a journey. You were on the light side. You've gone to the dark side. You're at the DMO. Now you're at one of those evil vendor companies. But you live and breathe data. You're a data nerd like I am. And I got to tell you, I know we've had the conversation about the blue pill on this show again. I want to have it again along this conversation, but I want to start in a specific place, and that's geolocation data.
Sure.
And I know you have strong thoughts about this and about how, you know, geolocation data is used for other industries, specifically retail, you know, in a more, I don't know, coherent way. But give me sort of the current state in your mind of where we are, as it relates to Geo-Data. Now, that's a loaded question because you work for a company that leans heavily on Geo-Data, but try to give the audience your honest Jay opinion, not the talking points of Zartico, but where are we today and what's missing? What are we missing when it comes to Geo-Data?
Well, you know, this fits into the discussion about the advertising and ad effectiveness really quite well. So I came from a DMO background, and there I spent 6.5 years really working on how do I, as a marketer, market the state of Utah more effectively. and I didn't have, DMOs don't have a cash register. DMOs don't own a point of sale. They don't get lead gen that comes through the website. And so what do we do instead? And from my experience, geolocation is the best proxy for a relationship with the customer that I've been able to come across to date. And geolocation is not a silver bullet. Geolocation is not perfect. Part of why in our company we pair geolocation and spend data, because observing something through two different data sets with different collection methodologies is always going to be stronger than just one. So if I were to take a big step back, I would say I encourage people to think of geolocation as a single question survey, but that single question survey is done hundreds of thousands of times or millions of times, or in our case, we see around 2 billion observations per day. And we can see that survey with a much higher frequency than you would do something like an ad effectiveness or a destination survey. So I answer that question, where are you right now, starts to create this really rich understanding of customer behavior, origin markets, how they're traveling, why they're traveling, when they're traveling. Where I think it falls short and where people get into trouble, because Stuart, you were saying, where are the pitfalls of geolocation? It's in trying to be over-reliant on geolocation as a counter. It really, just the nature of the way that the data is collected, the governance of the data, it doesn't do as well with a high expectation of precision in counting. So in looking at extrapolated visitor counts or economic impact, economic forecasting, those are less effective as the more qualitative measures of where did somebody come? What are the places that they combined together? Did they include lodging in their stay? Are these destinations more inclined to visit restaurants than my attractions? Those are all things that are really in the sweet spot and the strength of geolocation data.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about where are we in terms of the accuracy of geolocation data. I think one of the criticisms it gets a lot, and I've been a critic of it too, is just the sample size, in terms of is it really representative? And I think we've also seen with some of the data providers that there's constant shifts in terms of either technological limitations or privacy regulations that are impacting the validity of the data over a longitudinal kind of time frame. So I think there's a distrust sometimes in Geo-Data from some folks, and myself included. So where are we today in terms of how big is the sample size? Is it really representative? Have we gotten to a point where the data is stable enough for us to make year over year and comparisons and over, or even beyond a year over year?
Well, the accuracy and stability really come down to how you're using it. And so in some cases, there's a misalignment with what geolocation is and its best uses. So let me answer that a little bit more precisely. So the number of devices in a geolocation data set changes on a regular basis, on a daily basis. That's just an inherent nature of it. When you survey, if you do a set of surveys out in the wild, you'll probably get a different number of respondents on a given day. But the number of respondents, if you have 500 one day, 550 the next day, 600 the next day, and 450 the next day, that doesn't invalidate the survey. It only does if you're looking at the count of the number of respondents to the survey as a primary metric. If you're looking at the count of the number of surveys as, well, do I have a sufficient sample size, a body to be representative of the phenomenon I'm studying? Well, then that's okay. It's a diagnostic, not a primary metric. What you're really looking at is how did people respond to the survey? So over the course of those days, the number of devices that are in the data set, or the number of devices that a destination like Myrtle Beach will see observed in their destination will fluctuate. But the percentages of the behavior within that are very stable. So if you're trying to count, say, I had 200,000 devices in 1 year or 1 month, and I had 350,000 devices the next month, that's probably going to be driven more by the change and the fluctuation in the devices in the data set than it is in the behavior. But if I say 22% of my observations came from Atlanta and 24% came from Atlanta after an ad campaign, that's far more stable and far more accurate. So how you're using the data, how you're interpreting the data really becomes the most important question for can you trust geolocation data?
Jay, that brings up a question for me though, and I'm going to mention a couple things just to kind of bring the audience along here. But in research, in order to trust kind of the directional outcomes that you get from the data, you have to have a statistically significant data set, right? Because if your sample size is too small, then the directional information that you get from the sample could be misleading and could lead you to make poor decisions. And so the question I have for you is, how do we know in each individual destination whether or not the sample size is statistically significant? Because I could see a lot of people taking the advice that you just gave, right? That really the more important thing here is this directional information, that how did they answer the survey? What is their behavior, right? And what you guys do a great job of is when somebody comes in market, you can say, what restaurants do they go to and what attractions do they visit? And how does that interplay with the place that they came from? But as a destination, the thing that scares me is making decisions off of non-statistically significant data sets. And so tell me, for all the destinations listening, how do you even know if the numbers you're dealing with have a statistically significant data set?
Your provider should be giving that to you. That's a standard part of our platform. If you go to the bottom of any module, it shows you what sample size is pulled from. And anyone can go to, I recommend that somebody do this. You go to the SurveyMonkey sample size calculator, and you can type in, what is your margin of error? Because when we talk about statistically significant, it's a continuous. It isn't a threshold by which it either is or is not statistically significant. We're saying under these conditions of a confidence interval and a margin of error, is it statistically significant? So we use that as a shorthand for something that's a more complex statistical. But point aside, once you tend to get above, several hundred in a sample set that is representative, to come back to your question, Stuart, well, then you start to reach the 95.5, 95% confidence interval, plus or minus 5% margin of error. And you get tighter as you go up from that. When you look at a destination level insight or an origin market insight, most often when you're looking at geolocation, you're looking at tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or if you're a state, you're looking in the millions. So the statistical significance question is not a question of, is there enough sample? Now, certainly one can apply a whole bunch of filters. So I want to look at this restaurant on this day with this origin market, and you stack them on top of each other and you get a really small sample size, and you'll probably have something that's directional, but not particularly accurate. That absolutely is the case. And that's also the case if you were to look at spend data or you were to look at survey data. I remember trying to do an analysis with survey data, and turned out I had 35 respondents that met the criteria over a quarter. So geolocation, when you think of it from the mindset of, I'm familiar working with surveys, I can apply many of the same techniques and philosophies there, then geolocation has more than enough sample in most cases, unless you're cutting down the time period and you're stacking a bunch of filters on top of each other.
Super helpful, super helpful. And then the tool that you mentioned, I think it's really important for everybody to know. So the MailChimp, you're saying, has a tool where people can go in. Oh, SurveyMonkey, excuse me. Yeah. So SurveyMonkey has a tool that anybody can go use and figure out what the margin of error is going to be on a sample size. That's something I think everybody should be using in tandem. And of course, you have the tool within Zartico that allows people to also see if it's statistically significant. So super helpful. I think that'll benefit a lot of our audience to hear that.
Yeah. And now, Stuart, you asked a secondary question I want to make sure that I address, because it's a super important one. And that was, is it representative of the population? That is an underappreciated question. So I want to recognize it and step into that one. Because, again, with any survey, we're probably familiar with this. You got your 18 to 35, 36 to 44. We've got our different bins. And a reputable survey company, if they can't reach a representative sample of the population, they will adjust the weighting of those responses as a way of normalizing the panel in the survey. We do normalization the same way. Any good geolocation-based company would do the same. We know, for example, there are fewer devices per capita in California than there are in Dallas. And that's due to a whole host of behavioral things. We see that on both coasts. So it's incumbent upon us as the tool provider to make sure that we're compensating for those things, so that when you're comparing visitation from San Francisco and visitation from Dallas, that you're getting an apples to apples comparison. And that becomes doubly important if you're starting to layer in and answer questions about marketing effectiveness because of the investment that's being made in those communities. So my overarching theme is these are the right questions to be asking, and these are the right questions to be asking of anyone that's providing you geolocation data, because they are materially important in the level of trust and confidence and reliability you can have in that end tool.
And do you think in terms of directionally where we're heading with geolocation, I know, privacy restrictions have gotten tighter, even things, because, well, let's back up a little bit. Will you talk about how the data providers are actually capturing some of this geolocation data, and then we'll jump into is the resolution of that reducing or increasing over time? Will you talk a little bit about that?
So geolocation data comes from applications which are installed on your phone, which a user opts in to allow location services. Depending upon their handset and depending upon the terms of service, a reputable geolocation data provider will only use stuff that has an explicit opt-in. There have been some instances in the news recently where providers had ignored that opt-in. That's not where we source our data. So it comes from somebody opting in, typically where geolocation is a core component of the utility of the application. So that data is then sold through a set of brokers, aggregated together and cleaned, and then we buy the full fire hose. We want the raw stuff. And then we supply a series of transformations on top of it. We've got 2 patents pending for. One is around the stability that we talked about, that fluctuation in the signal. How do we normalize that over time so that it is more temporally consistent? You think of it like a steady cam over time on the data. And then secondarily, within the geolocation data, there are precise observations and there are imprecise. So the imprecise is, think of Google Maps. I'm in Salt Lake City, you type in Salt Lake City, it drops the pin kind of in the center point of the city. It's not a precise location, it's an approximate location. That's commingled in the data set. So we clean that stuff out too. Those are all important steps that if you're a consumer of geolocation data, you want to make sure that those things are accounted for, because they can send you in wild directions. And as someone who's worked with this data for 5 years very, very closely, we learned a lot of those lessons the hard way. Our partners would say, hey, why is my dog park my number 3 POI in my state? Well, it turns out that dog park happened to be centrally located right on where those imprecise data points are. So we've learned and iterated and have gotten to a point of, from our perspective, substantial stability in the geolocation signal, because we have done so much investment into buying the raw geolocation data, working with the materials, and really understanding it as a raw material. And that would be different if somebody's just buying a snapshot of data off the shelf.
So typically, in terms of the size, the scale of the data set, are we talking, just for our audience, are we talking in terms of this representing 50% of the market, 20% of the market, 1% of the market? Like, not I don't need precision, but where are we from a scale perspective in terms of how many people we're actually able to see?
It's going to vary depending upon your geographic region. It's going to vary depending upon your POIs that are selected. This is kind of an underappreciated thing. Some folks will set you up with 10 POIs and call you good and send you on your way.
Yeah.
Well, if we're worried about
POI,
bias,
by the way, for the audience,
point of interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
So let's say we're working with a destination and we've set POIs around your convention center, couple of key attractions and some hotels, and we just have a small number of those. We think of all of the possible signal that's traveling through your destination. We've actually introduced a huge amount of bias in what we just did, because we've biased toward a subset of travelers to your destination. We've almost completely ignored VFR, visiting friends and relatives, to your destination. So part of our process is not to look at dozens, but to look at hundreds or thousands of places so that we have a larger coverage. Think of it like when you're buying a digital camera, you went from a 2 megapixel to a 6 megapixel to a 10 to a 12, you got a higher resolution picture. So having points of interest becomes a point of that, a point of improving the consistency and removing bias from your view. Now, the question that Stuart keeps coming back to is it really a representative sample, and how large is the sample size? From all of the tests that we've looked at, because we do this origin market normalization, we're looking at how many people are in the different bins of age, demographics, and geographic coverage, and doing some slight adjustments, just like you would with a reputable survey, to compensate for any micro adjustments where it isn't representative of the general population. So can geolocation data be representative of the population? Yes, when treated properly. Does it have a sufficient sample size to have very high confidence and low margins of error? Yes. Does the setup and the data governance become an important, if not overriding factor? Absolutely, yes.
Interesting. Okay.
So you answer the question without answering the question. I love. So let me ask it another way. So if I've got a point of interest, my convention center, and I'm showing 500 devices hit there on any given day, I know you can't be accurate, but is that 1% of the total people that were probably there, or is that 90% of the total people were there?
It's far less than 90%, and it will vary depending upon how long somebody stays at that point of interest. So I'm gonna come out again with the survey analogy. So I promise I'll answer your question, Stuart. I'm not trying to duck it.
All right.
But I worry that it could be misinterpreted if I just give you the number first.
Yeah.
We've recently gone through an election. They did substantial political polling. When you look at a snapshot political poll of who's going to win the election, they look at anywhere between 500 and 2,000 survey respondents out of 330 million folks in the United States. So what is the percentage of the total population that's surveyed? It's infinitesimally small, but it's still accurate. So similarly, when we do clinical drug trials, the number of people who we survey for a new drug that we're doing the trust in, very small. So when we look at a geolocation data, if we look at an event, like a stadium had 60,000 people who were in attendance, depending upon the event, we'll see anywhere on the low end, it will be 1, on the high end, it will be around 5%. Is that a statistically significant and representative sample of those folks who were there? Yes.
Yeah.
So again, if we try to use geolocation data to count and say, well, how many people were at the Penn State football game? You're going to be better served just using the ticket, the turnstiles. Yeah. But if you want to know who came to the game, were they residents, were they visitors, did they go to the bars afterward, did they fly in when they came to the destination? That's where geolocation data really excels. So I want to put a fine point on that.
Yeah, well answered. And I think I'm asking that specifically because I think it's one of the criticisms of geolocation that I actually think is a bit of a red herring. Like I think people focus on that small percentage, and they don't think about the statistics side of it. So thank you. I think you did a great job answering that. So let's shift a little bit. I'm going to come back to geo in a second, but you sort of pulled on a thread that is one of my pet peeves in the industry and I haven't solved for. You know, we're about to hire a director of research and technology, and one of the core focuses I'm going to put them on is solving this problem, because I don't think anyone's done it. So I've been a Zartico user for a couple of years, 4 years now. We had it when I joined here, and to your credit as a company, I was ready to cut it loose when I didn't see the value. Your team really sat me down and walked me through it and enlightened me on the value, and we've been very happy with it ever since. But one of the questions I keep asking your team, and they keep pushing back on, which I understand why, especially after this conversation, is I want an estimate of visitor volume in real time or near real time, right? And it doesn't exist. You've got tools like Placer that sort of claim to do it, but they've got all the issues that you're talking about in the geolocation. I've even said I don't care about accuracy really. I just care. Oh no, I don't care about precision. I care about accuracy, as long as relative trends are the same. And I want to triangulate it against other data points that I know solidly, like occupancy and other stuff, right? So we could triangulate. But to your credit as a company, you keep saying we could do that, but here's the problems with it. We could do that, but here are the problems, and so it becomes meaningless. And so I don't know how is that on the roadmap for Zartico? Is that on the roadmap? Have you seen anything out there that really helps solve that problem? Because right now, we and many others rely on folks like Longwords or Next Factor or Tourism Economics to do these surveys in retrospect, right? So they're doing panel surveys of people after the fact to see if they came to our destination. And then we extrapolate that from a very small sample size to say, we got 20 million visitors last year, but I'm getting them like 3 to 6 months late in those numbers. And I want something that's more near real time. So where are you guys on that journey? And are you going to keep telling me no? Because I really get sad when people tell me no. So.
Especially live on air. You're going to tell him no live on air?
Yeah. That's that, we talk about leverage in a feature request. Doing that live on a podcast is a pretty good leverage, Stuart.
That's
so
right.
When we look at where we prioritize our time as a company, we want to focus on those tools that help you make strategic decisions.
Yeah.
And the strategic decisions that you make most often are really around marketing. How am I spending my marketing dollars? How am I managing my destination from a yield perspective? Am I attracting the right quality of visit? So our emphasis is always going to be there because of the frequency of those decisions and the magnitude of importance. So that's where our priority lies. And that's why we've been really heavily focused on investing. And you've seen a lot of product enhancements and product improvements focused on the marketing and marketing performance space.
Mm-hmm.
Stuart, as the team has said very accurately, we could give you that number. Some things to talk through, because this is Destination Discourse. So let's talk through it. So one, there's an anchor that you have from your past trends. So I could give you a number, hypothetically. Well, let's say it's perfectly accurate, but it's also significantly different than you've had in the past. I remember when I was at the state and we changed vendors, the dog and pony show that it took to convince the governor and the legislature that because we changed methodology, we went from X to Y, and this methodology was different, but it's not bad, and those numbers were discounted. That was really difficult. So if you think about the opportunity of investing resources into that number, Stuart, tell me what you would like, how you would like to use that number for strategic decision making. And what if I gave you a number that was accurate, but it's different? Do you want to go through the process of changing that mental anchor and that mental frame of reference compared to what it was in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is why I love this question and why we've been sort of beating it up with your team is this really, we're touching on the red pill, blue pill thing, right? Because I think we're comfortable as an industry using the methodology we have because they've worked for a very long time. I don't have confidence in their precision, right? I think they're relatively accurate, and I think they certainly over time you can see if you're going up 10% or down 10%, right? They're relatively accurate. But I really don't have an idea for how many actual people are coming to Myrtle Beach, right? And that's important for a variety of reasons. I mean, not just from a marketing perspective, but from a destination management perspective, knowing how to police, knowing it in nearer real time, knowing what's happening this week, what the trend is it going up, is it going down? Like there's a lot of logistical reasons that I would want to know that. But I think the biggest thing is at some point, people are going to start questioning methodologies that we currently use. And I think there's some houses of cards that exist that if you pull a thread, that even if they're statistically relevant, when you start getting into how we're getting to the number right now, layman's, and all it takes is one uneducated elected official to start asking stupid questions, and the house of cards could fall down, And so I like the current methodology we use. I don't like that it takes so long to get the answers, and I worry that at some point someone's going to start asking questions that become really painful for the industry unless we do something better. And, the methodology we're using is decades old, right? And has it tweaked and evolved, and have we gotten better at cleaning up data? Sure. But the core fundamentals of surveying a panel are the same that we've been using for decades. And there's so much new technology out there. The fact that no one has really had an attempt at doing this, and no one is like, I'm someone that I recognize how difficult it would be to say, okay, Myrtle Beach was getting 20 million, and now we're saying it's 16 million, or now we're saying it's 24 million. Or I could swing either way. We don't know. But I'm willing to have that conversation if at the end of that conversation I can say, but we're more confident in the results and we're getting it more frequently and it's more up to date. And that helps me tell my story to our stakeholders, which ultimately is a large part of our job, is justifying our existence and providing evidence of value being driven to our community so that we stay relevant, we stay funded and all that stuff. So it's not like a silver bullet. It's not something that I would hang my hat on and say, this is the metric we were all chasing. It's just that I think we'd be able to be better storytellers if we had something that was more recent and more accurate and more defensible.
Yeah.
So
and I think that what you point to of the opportunity for us to modernize our methodologies is a really important one, because we're in this context. Kristen Reynolds brought it up really well as the DMO doomed. That episode was a lot of fun because she raised really important questions. We think about how much DMOs have changed from being the primary source of information, sending out a travel guide, to having the brochures, to now having the digital presence. Well, when you look at AI, you guys have done a lot of podcasts on AI and the role of the DMO with AI-driven search engines. There's an existential need for DMOs to be really focused on value. And Stuart, you highlighted on many of those. You know, I talked about marketing performance, being judicious and being able to measure and account for your marketing budget, but also understanding the destination management. What's the visitor economy? You are a steward and a liaison between this ecosystem of hotels, restaurants, accommodations, guides, outfitters, all of these things that are the visitor economy, and the elected official. And that conduit role or ambassador role for the DMO is a critically important one. So to come back to your original question of will you ever get this, where I think there would be tremendous opportunity is in a hybrid approach, that somebody like a Zartico partners with somebody who has classically supplied this data in the past, that they can use our data with their methodologies to minimize a disruptive change, but to be able to give it to you on a more frequent or an automated basis, because it would provide a point of continuity. So I think there is an opportunity there, and it may come in a non-conventional partnership.
Well, I've got a perfect name for it. If Zartico ever comes up with an estimate for visitor count, you may have to fight Zillow for it, but I think you should totally call it a Zestimate.
Zestimate.
And then it's the Zestimate of visitor count, because then you're saying it's an estimate. It's not a precise thing. So
I'm sure Zillow will let that go. It's
no question. They're not going to get litigious at all. And but this is great, Jay.
Hey,
I mean, I really love this conversation. Adam, I've hogged most of the questions. Do you want to dig into any of the things we talked about?
It's been fun to watch you just basically take this as a forum for you to improve the product specifically that you're getting in Myrtle Beach. But I'd like to benefit our audience a little bit more now. I want to change direction. Jay, you actually said something at the very beginning of this conversation that I don't normally start taking notes in the middle of an episode, but I wanted to make sure we came back to this. You said that data is the best proxy for a visitor relationship. And as somebody who has kind of taken on the need for destinations to build more meaningful relationships with their audience, it was a little bit nails on the chalkboard for me, because I worry about destinations thinking they can substitute visitor relationships for data. And so I want to understand a little bit better what you mean when you say that data can be the very best proxy for a visitor relationship. And I want to make sure we clarify that for our audience so that they can understand what you mean by that.
Yeah, so I would look at it as the best proxy for a cash register. That if I'm understanding how somebody is consuming my product as a destination, you know, Stuart talked about Myrtle Beach. If I want to understand how somebody is traveling through and consuming Myrtle Beach, geolocation data is a fantastic tool for understanding what are the regions that they're going to, what are the times of day that they're going to, what places are they visiting together. You can get a depth of knowledge and a speed of answers that are almost impossible to match with a survey. That is not to say that it should be the only methodology or approach that somebody takes in understanding their visitors. We are big fans of multimodality, and quantitative and qualitative data work really well together because they complement the gaps and deficiencies. There is no one magic tool to rule them all. Geolocation is not that. Spending data is not that. Surveys are not that. So really understanding, how do I choose the right tool that's on the workbench for the job that I have at hand becomes an important question for a modern DMO.
But you're basically saying in a situation where you can't grab the visitor by the shoulders and say, okay, answer these questions, their behavior that's demonstrated in the geolocation is the best proxy for that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and it's a way of answering that question at the scale that you can't do if you're grabbing the visitor by the shoulders.
Yeah. I like that. Oh, go ahead, finish your thought, Jay, and then I've got another question.
No, please go ahead.
Well, so basically what I want for all the destinations that might be listening, I would like you to just walk us through a thought exercise. So let's put you back now making the digital decisions for the state of Utah, right? With all the data, because you've toyed with a variety of different types of data and use cases for data. I want to know from a priority perspective, if you were back in that seat at the state of Utah, what specific data would you be looking for and what decisions would you make based on that data? So tell me your methodology of like, and let's use an example, maybe one of the national parks, because you guys did a lot of work around the national parks. Let's say Bryce Canyon. So if I wanted to make the best decisions around Bryce Canyon, what data am I looking for? And then how would you action on the behavioral data that you see?
Cool. I like that as a thought experiment. Okay, so I'm going to start. I'm going to start with a little different question. We showed a beautiful ad for Ireland at the beginning of the clip, at the beginning of this episode. Was it effective? So we enjoyed the ad. We appreciated the ad. It connoted branding and awareness for Ireland, but did either of the three of us take out our credit card and buy right there?
I did not. I just want to let you know, I did not.
Yeah, no, I totally did. I'm going tomorrow.
Okay, so we got 1 out of 3. But the point I wanted to make of emphasis here was it starts with the strategy. It starts with the strategic plan of what you're looking to accomplish. So in that case, it's probably reasonable to say that that was a brand awareness ad for Ireland. They probably weren't expecting people to see that on YouTube and take out their credit card and buy a trip then. Okay, so now I'm looking at, as a marketer, how do I balance the long-term brand awareness and brand equity with the need to drive short-term results? This is an area that I think destination marketers need to evolve their toolbox. I pulled some data from conversion rates from our website attribution tool. So this is a run a site pixel. We see somebody comes to the website. They come, how long of a time period do we see them later? We saw 85% of conversions happened greater than 4 months. So if I'm thinking as a marketer, again, your hypothetical scenario, Adam, I'm thinking, well, I want to drive long-term brand value for the state of Utah or whatever destination I'm promoting. Also, I'm probably going to want to help to fill the rooms over the short time period. So I'm going to look at content, I'm going to look at lower funnel activities, try and drive that over the short term. Those are the areas where I'm going to be a little bit more attuned to how do I optimize the media buy and make sure that I'm seeing apples to apples and measuring apples to apples so that I'm utilizing that investment that I'm making in digital, almost like I would a stock portfolio. I can see I got these 2 display vendors, and one of them has a conversion rate that's 25% higher, but that conversion rate that's 25% higher also costs me twice as much. So how do I want to optimize that ad buy and work with my agency on that? Then I'm also going to be sure to layer in a lot of content and storytelling around that. It isn't one modality. And so as we think about what data to use, we got to pick up the right tool on the tool bench. I'm looking at, am I being successful at increasing visitation to Bryce Canyon? Me looking at the lodging tax receipts, because that's how the DMOs are typically funded. You'll be looking at the spending and average stay value. You'll be looking at the occupancy. Next thing, you'll be looking at the individual ad performance, the creative performance, the website performance. So work for the big picture strategy and build my measurement out from there, but that there's a measurement point at each subset in between.
Right. And you said one thing that I just want to double click on. You said that 85% of the bookings that you're seeing is more than 4 months is the window from when they book to when they actually visit. Or are you saying when they see the ad to when they actually book the trip?
We see when people come to the website, first visit to the website, and then when they arrive. It's 85% are greater than 4 months, but more than a third of them are greater than a year. So as a family, as you're planning, you're sitting down together around the Christmas, you're together, hey, let's plan next year's vacation. It's quite a common occurrence, more so than we had thought because of the new measurement. So when you think about what are the right tools for the job, these are some of the ways, and Stuart, you talked about changing perceptions and changing methodologies. These are some of the things that we're seeing in the data that encourage us to rethink some of our practices.
Well, and it's fascinating because I don't think most destination marketing budgets reflect the window that you just outlined.
No.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because there's a piece in between those two of the first ad and the arrival that's very important, right? And that's when they book. And that attribution to the booking, which is for most DMOs invisible right now, they don't have insight on the actual booking date. That's an area we're really investing in. We're trying to figure that out. You know, we're building our own booking technology. We're investing in tools like Flip2 so we can see that, because really what I want to know as a marketer is, when should I be talking to this person about booking? And if they're coming in 4 months or greater, that doesn't mean they're booking 4 months or later. They're probably booking closer to the first click than they are to the visit, right? And so we want to be talking to them from the minute they're considering all the way through to booking, about booking. But then we also want to know when they book so we can talk about anticipation from when they book to when they arrive, because I got a shot at their second wallet at that point. Now they've already spent their money on the trip. Now I can start talking to them about, well, what you're going to do when you're here. Are you going to spend more money? Are you going to stay an extra night? Those are really impactful levers that I think most DMOs aren't playing in. And I know Zartico is really getting into the attribution side. I think I've even heard people refer to your technology now as attribution technology more than geotechnology. So if you guys enjoyed this conversation, if you want to learn more about Zartico, Jay, if they want to hit up you or find out more about Zartico, where can they do that?
Find me at Jay Kinghorn on LinkedIn and Zartico.com.
And if you have any final thoughts or advice for folks, what would it be?
I wanted to answer that question that you said about the booking window, because the booking window is shorter. It's between 60 and 90 days typically. But the key thing that would be my final takeaway, we see this in the ad performance data, the marketing data, and the overall effectiveness of markets. Geography and proximity rules all. The closer the markets, the more frequent the travel, and the greater your ability to sway those. So you see shorter booking windows close and much longer booking windows far. So the information is there. It's incumbent upon the users to grab it. And we're excited to be building tools for this industry. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you, Jay. This is really good conversation. And tell the team, the PR team, that we're sorry we ignored all their notes and we went completely off script today. But you did them proud. Adam, if they want to find you, and any final thoughts?
Yeah, Jay, thanks a lot. This has been really fun, and I like a lot of what you guys are doing from a data perspective. If people want to find me, it's Adam Stoker on LinkedIn. You can find me on Tourism IQ or adam@thebrandrevolt.com.
But it's Brand Revolt, but it's the Brand Revolt. But it's Brand Revolt, but it's the Brand Revolt.
Yes,
I want to clarify
someday,
that.
yeah, when I have the financial security that Stuart does, I will buy the URL brandrevolt.com.
Who owns it right now? Have you done the research?
I haven't yet.
All right. Maybe I'll go buy it and then I'll sell it to you for like a 300%
More
markup.
Financial security for Stuart. That's what we need.
That's fine. If you want to reach out to me, it's stuart.butler@visitmyrtlebeach.com, or you can hit me up on LinkedIn. We'd love to have you subscribe to this show so you can listen to more of these in-depth conversations. These are the conversations our industry needs more of, so we can all be a little more effective at our job, be a little bit better tomorrow than we were today. And until next time, this has been Destination Discourse.